Are you seeing my desktop your end?
It's thinking about it. I think it's yes, I can now. It's appeared,
Took a little while there. It's still morning, so it sort of like took a moment to gear up.
Yeah, it hasn't had enough caffeine yet.
Yeah. So we're going to do an audit of your knowledge panel for Ambridge HR. As it stands now, when you Google Ambridge HR, you see you have a beautiful Google My Business listings, which is great. It's not a knowledge panel, however, and this is what we're going to help you achieve today, as in the steps to achieve them. Okay. So when I have a look at your website for Ambridge HR, there are several things you need to acquire a knowledge graph. You need to have an entity home, what we consider an entity home. So, and in fact, let me backtrack a little. A knowledge graph on Google, it shows the facts about a brand, an entity. So a brand is essentially, an entity is essentially a name, place, or thing. And in this case, for Ambridge HR, it will be your brand's name. So one of the things that Google looks for is to have enough confidence in its understanding of your brand. And the way we achieve that is by optimizing your website in a particular way. There are 3 steps you need to achieve this. I'll give you the overview of each 3 and then delve into each one. So you need an entity home, essentially a page on your website which you feed as the source of information about your entity, your brand. The second thing is a clear, concise description of your entity. And the third thing is consistency across the web, across the internet. So let's go onto your website. For your landing page as an entity, usually it's better to use a page that's not the home page. And I'll explain what I mean by that. The home page is usually great from a branding point of view for your users. In this case, we want to focus on the branding for search engines, particularly Google. What I tend to suggest to folks is to use the About page. Now, this is a great page for to feed as your entity home, your source of information for Google and all search engines, in fact, because it's usually not a page that marketers use for marketing purposes. That tends to be the home page and other pages, not necessarily the About page. So it's great from an entity home point of view. So the About page will be the best page in this case for your brand. Now, that's the first thing, and it's brilliant because you already have this page on your site, so you don't need to create anything. Step 1, check. Step 2 is to have a clear, concise description of your entity. Now, this is where we have to be quite specific with the way we describe the entity. In this case, your brand. We have to show the description in a very fundamental or rudimentary manner. So think of it as, okay, we're trying to explain something to a child, so to speak. So we use a certain approach for it. We use what we consider a subject, verb, and object type of approach to describe the entity. So I'll give you an example for this. Austine Esezobor, subject is a verb and SEO Consultant, object. And the first sentence on this page, being this right here, ideally should have that information. This would be one of the first things that Google and all search engines look to understand the entity. So as an example for your brand, it will be Ambridge HR, subject, verb is, and then the the rest of the sentence as you want to describe Ambridge HR, the brand, the entity.
Yeah.
This right here is a way for Google to understand who you are, what you do, and which audience you serve. And that is important for Google to display the fact about this brand to the audience that you want to acquire. Whenever someone searches for you, when Google has this factual information and has confidence of this information, it will then show it on the right-hand panel. Again, the right-hand panel deals with the facts about the entity. So the second step here is to update this text. You don't necessarily need to replace it. You can keep this, just have a sentence or two before it, which explains the entity, describes the entity.
So should I keep it really simple and say something like Ambridge HR is an HR consultancy? Or can I make it a bit longer, or as you say, maybe 2 sentences to say Ambridge HR is an HR consultancy providing HR support and advice for small to medium-sized businesses?
Yep.
Which would be better, or are either of those okay?
Either are okay. The second one sounds really great because it shows who you are, what you do, and which audience you serve. Usually, I recommend folks use 1 to 3 sentences explaining those 3, starting with your with the subject, verb, object format.
Right.
So yes, that, as you just mentioned, works perfectly fine. Now, once you have that description, once you have that description on there, you now have 2 of the 3 most important things: the entity home. This landing page is going to be the source, so it's very strong from a search point of view. The description is about the entity, Ambridge HR. And the third step, this is where we get very, this is, if you like, the exciting part, because once you have those first 2 steps, the third step is to then have consistency of the brand and the description across the web. Now, when we're thinking across the web, we're thinking of a number of sites that you can definitely use. Sites that you have partial control of, i.e. social media sites, are perfect for it. However, I have to mention, it has to be a site, or a page rather, about Ambridge HR. So an example here, I noticed on the top right hand side, you have Google My Business, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Google My Business, that can definitely have your entity description because it's about your brand, Ambridge HR. LinkedIn, I'll come back to in a moment. Facebook and Instagram, those 2 can also have your entity description because it's about your brand and Ambridge HR. LinkedIn, however, in this case is slightly different because this right here is a LinkedIn profile of your personal LinkedIn page, your professional LinkedIn page, but it's not about Ambridge HR. It's about you as a personal brand. So it's a different type of entity about Ambridge HR. Knowledge panels are built on a per entity basis. So if we're saying to Google what Ambridge HR is about, and on your professional LinkedIn page, we're also having the same description about Ambridge HR, it's a conflict of, it's 2 different entities trying to battle for the same knowledge panel.
I have got an Ambridge HR LinkedIn page. Should I change that so that it links to that? Right.
Yes. Yes. So if you have that page, you just need to, well, in that case, it'll be 2 steps for LinkedIn. 1, to change this link right here to your Ambridge HR page, and then have the entity description on that page. That will be perfect. Now, those 3 pages, those, in this case, 4 pages of your social media profiles will be great sources for your knowledge panel. You'll see once you have your knowledge panel for it, it will be similar to your Google. Well, actually, in this case, it's not quite, it doesn't quite show it, but sometimes you will see the links to your social media profile. That is, again, Google offering.
We've seen that on some other people's,
Yeah. Okay. So you'll have something like that on there. Now, these are for your social media profiles. From a consistency basis, whenever you have information about your brand on other sources, it will be great to have the same consistency across those sources as well. So starting with your social media platforms profiles will be a great starting point, and then you want to have additional ones. Usually it takes anywhere between 10 to 30 links or citations, as we call them, to trigger a knowledge panel. Now, let me delve in just a bit deeper into this third part. There are two ways of having a mention, if you like, on platforms or sites outside of your site. One is to have a citation. So think of it just as a text, the description on those platforms. The second way is to have a link. And ideally, what you want on those platforms, or any platforms across the web that mentions Ambridge HR, is to have a link back to this specific page, the About page. What this does for Google, it acts as a point of reference as who those sites are talking about in terms of the entity. And those sites linking to this page it acts as a reinforcement of Google's understanding. So initially, Google will come onto this page, have a look at the entity, read the description, understand it, and then go to other pages across the web. And when they see the same information, that acts as a source of confirmation. It's corroboration across the web. It's giving them more confidence. The more they see this consistency across the web, the more their confidence increases. And after some time, your knowledge panel will then be triggered because Google will have enough confidence in their understanding of your brand, Ambridge HR. And all of this starts with you feeding this information to Google with this specific page. So when you update this page, it becomes a very valuable page. So never delete it because you don't want to do all that work. You don't want to do all that work building your knowledge panel with this page and then having it deleted.
Yeah. Goodness. Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. As you say, quite exciting to be able to see all of that happen. So yeah, okay.
Yes, indeed. So to recap, actually, let me delve in a bit more into the timeline in terms of expectations. Okay. It takes around 6 to 9 months for a knowledge panel to be triggered, roughly. And the reason for this is Google really wants to have that confidence in their understanding. So when they crawl your page, think of it as almost like a points type of system. They have a point of understanding on your brand. When they crawl other pages across the web, let's say starting with your social media profiles, that gives them more points to consider. And after a while of having that consistency in place and that understanding, they then have the confidence to trigger your knowledge panel. It's all about confidence because Google naturally will crawl pages across the site, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have confidence in the entities, the brands that they are crawling, right? So it does take some time for them to have that confident. But once you have your knowledge panel triggered, it's usually a very strong sign that, okay, they understand you, they know who you are, what you do, and more importantly, which audience you serve. Now, we're on a desktop, right? So we're seeing the both panels, left-hand row, both rows, left-hand row and right-hand row. I mentioned on a previous call, the left-hand row deals with the rankings, right? The recommendations from Google. The right-hand row deals with the facts. On mobile, we don't have two rows, we just have one row. And what tends to happen is the right-hand row dominates the left-hand row. And this is mainly because Google is wanting to present the fact about a brand to their users, for the users to quickly access information, decipher information, and continue with their search journey. So it's a very powerful sign once you have a knowledge panel. Now, I had a look at Krona Group.
Yeah.
And they have a quite a good knowledge panel. It's not with their website, it's with Wikipedia, which is a shame for them, because it's essentially they'll have a hard time managing this knowledge panel. That's the first thing. The second thing is they haven't claimed the knowledge panel. So it's very difficult for them to shape the way they are, the way they appear when people search for them. When you
so
build,
is that something I need to look out for in time? Do I need to look out for that little link along the bottom saying claim this knowledge panel?
Yes. So So that's why I have this up here, because when you have your knowledge panel, it will no worries. It will look something similar to this, where you have your brand name, company, the logo, the description, which will be the entity description I mentioned, and the source will be underneath, which in this case will be your website. And particularly, specifically, in a lot of cases, it will be the specific page. So it will be your about page on your website. And you'll have your social profiles, and you'll have this claim your knowledge panel link. When you click on it, it will be if you're almost like a form, a very quick form for you to fill out. This is the final step in you attaining this knowledge panel, because Google will trigger it based on their confidence. But when you claim it, and you'll have to claim it with, anyone can't claim a knowledge panel of any brand, right? So I couldn't claim this knowledge panel for Krona, because the form is the verification, if you like. And once this is verified, this claim the knowledge panel button will disappear, and this will be a fixture whenever someone searches. This is very powerful and very brilliant, because this is the first step in Google building out your knowledge panel. In a lot of the cases, this right here will be the standard view, but it will change based on what people search for relating to the brand. So let me show you a very quick example with Karen Brady.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So this right here tends to be what Google shows after the 6 to 9 month period. They will have this base in place, and then even more of a beautiful SERP layout. And this right here is just brilliant. It's just perfect. It changes based on what people search for. In this case, it's her personal branding. So your business information will be slightly different, but it will have everything relating to your brand in place. Now, you see here that knowledge panels is very new. A lot of businesses haven't claimed or created theirs. When creating yours, definitely do so with your website rather than the Wikipedia route. When Krona come to claim this knowledge panel, they will have a very difficult time trying to convince Google that their understanding, the confidence which they have should be changed, right? So it's better to actually trigger it with your own website than to try to change it having had Google establish it with a Wikipedia page. So all of that is to say, you have a really good grounding to be ahead of competitors in that sense.
Fabulous. That's great news.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So let me recap here with this summary of actions. First step will be to commit to the entity page, which in this case we know will be your about page, this page. Mm-hmm. Second step will be to update the description, and the description should show definitely the first paragraph, usually of consisting of one to three sentences, explaining who you are, what you do, and which audience you serve. And the format of it has to be specifically subject, verb, object. The first sentence has to be in that format. And then the third step is to have your entity, your brand, and your description consistent across the web, starting with your social media profiles for the brand. So there's quite a few steps to take, but I've summed it up in those three. Let me lastly mention, when you're updating the description across the web, it's fine to have it appropriated for the platform. So Twitter, or X as it now is, the description on there, I think the text or the description on X used to be a lot shorter than it is now, the character length. So in that case, you might have had just, let's say, one or two sentences, whereas in other platforms, you can have more sentences. You can have a wider paragraph. It's fine to do that as long as the consistency is pretty much in place for 90% of the cases.
Okay.
So
that's good to know.
Those will be your three steps. And remember, it's on your knowledge panel. It's on a per brand or entity, as SEOs call it, basis. So once you build this out for your business brand, Ambridge HR, the next step will be to do so for your personal brand. Now, this might usually for personal branding, it's easier. In this case, there's difficulty because your name is quite popular. So it'll be a case of associating your name with your brand. And after a while of doing so, it becomes simpler for Google. But start with your business brand first.
So will it start to link my personal brand with my business brand after a while?
Yes, after a while,
which is why
it will start to link it. So I have this example here just to see, because initially Google will have a hard time trying to decipher Victoria Thomson across let's say across the UK. But once you have your knowledge panel for your brand and you come to build your personal one, it will most likely change from this view where Google isn't sure which Victoria Thomson one is searching for, to something like this, where Google is aware of you, but doesn't yet have the confidence in who you are.
Right.
And then it'll be a case of carrying out the same steps to build out your knowledge panel for your personal branding, which will be exactly the same steps, ideally for a page specifically about you. So you might also have it linked to this page, almost as a follow-up page about your personal branding. So you'll have one page per entity, one for your brand, Ambridge HR, one for your personal brand.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. I was going to ask you as well about on that initial Google search page where it had the sort of knowledge panel. There was a little map which shows the UK, but it's because I work across the UK. I'm allowed to do that, but it's kind of expanded across Europe somewhere. Is this because it's not sure where I am, or do I need to do something so that it can just pinpoint the UK rather than having that really long kind of expansion over where I potentially work? Because that's definitely misleading for clients.
Right. So it's it'll have to. This delves into local SEO, which is slightly different to knowledge panels, but essentially Google is not entirely confident of their whereabout you are. If you have your Google My Business page, as in you have ownership of it, be a case of updating the information on there. There are several other tactics that you'll require to do so, but mainly Google listings, Google My Business listings, is controlled by the Google My Business page. So this is something that you can update, and it's very usually simpler than a knowledge panel. Because your business isn't necessarily location based, it'll be better when you have your knowledge panel for Google to show it above this, which in a lot of cases they tend to do so. I believe, let me see if I have an example here. Oh, I don't. I don't have an example. Okay. So, in any case, you'll have both your knowledge panel and your Google My Business listings. And when someone searches for you let's say they're close to where you are or your location, Google will show the Google My Business listings and then your knowledge panel beneath it. When someone is further,
I understand. Yeah,
further away from your location, it switches. You'll have the Google My Business listings first. Sorry, the knowledge panel first, Google My Business listings below. So and both will be a very strong sign that yes, you're well known by Google, which is what you want, because the better they know you, the more they can show your business to your target audience when they search for you.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. I'll have a look at that as well then. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Excellent. So let me end this there. I'll be very keen to see how you get on in the coming months. But just stick to those three steps that I mentioned as an overview. Your entity home, we know it. It's your About Us page.
I'm going to implement them quickly.
Okay. Yes. The quicker you implement, the quicker you can attain your knowledge panel. And yes, keep in touch. Let me know how you get on. I'll be very interested to see how your knowledge panel blossoms.
Yeah, me too. That's brilliant. That's been really helpful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Pleasure.